My friend says to me, "What rhymes with orange?" I said, "No, it doesn't."
Welcome to Tales from the Ditch.
So good.
Starring Sean Moss, Seth Wildshoot, and guest starring Mike of the House of Mumford. Good to have you, man.
Thanks.
What
thank you
website
for
are you
coming.
looking at
Sure.
currently?
This is, do you want me to read the whole URL? Because it's very long.
No.
It's tickled.com, which sounds way worse than it really is.
Continue.
And it is the 48 incredibly short, clean jokes that are actually funny page. And I'm loving this. I'm having a great time. How about this one? I bought a friend from... Wait, no, hold on. I gotta start over.
That was good. All right.
I bought my friend an elephant for his room. He said, "Thanks." I said, "Don't mention it."
Oh,
So good.
Disclaimer, I told these guys that joke earlier, so that was a fake laugh, 100%.
I still thought it was funny.
Jess was listening. She was scanning, and she was so frustrated by this. She was scanning, and it stopped on what's that? K-Love? Is that the kind?
Mm-hmm.
And they were telling a joke, and she's listening, going, "Oh!" And it was that whole joke of, you know how people say, "Was it intense, like in camping?"
Yeah.
So they were doing that type of joke, but saying past tense, and a guy ran past the campsite. That was so that's a gist. And the host didn't get it. So the co-host tries to explain, and I'm not kidding. The co-host for 5 minutes tries to explain. And here's the thing. Jess got mad because the co-host didn't explain. She goes, "Get it? Because blah, blah, blah. It's done. It's in the past." And she doesn't even bring up tents being a part of camping or the word. So she didn't get, and Jess said it was 5 minutes of a cheesy co-host explaining wrongly a joke to another host on a fundamentalist, like Christian station. And then she said, and then they went to Toby Mac. I didn't know what to do with myself. And I was like, it was 5 minutes literally where I was yelling at the radio. Like, that's not how the joke works.
Yeah, that's my typical experience with the radio as well. Lots of yelling.
Yes.
This is not a joke, but this has reminded me of something one time. I had to do a diversity training. I was required to do a diversity training at work.
Because you
And
violated
not
the
in
law.
response to anything. It was proactive.
It's because of racism.
And the teacher, I don't think had been doing it for very long, because basically early into the class he said, "Okay, let's go around and talk about some things that you've heard people saying that like were discriminatory sayings or stereotypical sayings."
I feel like you're asking for a whole heap of trouble right there.
I know, that's a terrible way to do it. And so people just started saying things, like awful things. And like the people who were saying things were not the caricature who they were describing.
They were not people of color or those people groups? Or?
Yes,
Okay.
it was crazy, and I was not opening
Who better
my
to
mouth.
lead that discussion than all the white folk?
I know, it was crazy. But anyways, here's where it got
Here's this
funny.
thing I said one time.
Yeah.
Here's where it got funny. So, it goes around to this, guy, and he says, "Oh, here's one thing." He goes, "Blondes are dumb." And he was like kind of like a dark haired guy, but he knew that. And the teacher goes, "Yeah, that's a good point." And then this blonde lady goes, "Oh, blondes are dumb."
No.
I'm totally serious. This
No.
really happened.
No.
This really happened. And
Did you look at her?
I
Did you stare
exited
at
the
her?
classroom and I just, I couldn't go back that day. It was the hardest thing. I had to actually go on a different class where that lady wasn't there, just because it was really hard for me not to laugh about it. And I don't even know if she was doing it to be funny or if she was purposely doing it because it was funny, but it was one of the funniest things that's ever happened
After
to me.
you
in my life.
attended, did they drop the charges?
Yes, there was no, it was my record was expunged.
Expunged.
Is that the word?
I'm getting that done this week, actually. My whole record taken care of. A guy from the Carson Church is helping me with that, actually.
Really?
I'm on step 3 of 4 to get all my stuff cleared.
Oh,
I
nice.
have to bring it down tomorrow, yeah. Ha! Take that, America.
Well, welcome, Mike.
Thanks.
Yes! Well, good to have you on the podcast. Yeah.
Mike, I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you so much for coming. You are a pastor.
That's correct.
You are also a musician.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did we start? Wait. Ready, Sean?
Is we just do a
should've
slow
never
clap
learned
to
that.
start? Is that how it works?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just an incredibly slow clap. We're just picking up where we left off.
Oh gosh.
So yes, to answer your question, I'm a pastor. I'm a
Yes.
musician. I'm actually both of those things at my job. I am the worship.
A pastor, musician?
I'm a musaster.
I've heard one of those before.
Yeah. Yeah. It's called my band in
Nickelback?
high school.
Oh.
Was a musaster.
Nickelback.
I was in a metal, well, not really a metal band. Now that I know what metal is, it wasn't technically a metal band, but it was called Blissful Schizo. When
That's
I was,
awesome, man.
Yeah, Blissful Schizo when I was
crazy.
in high school. And me and this guy, we just did a bunch of Ambien and tried to write metal music, and it was really bad.
That's the most metal thing.
That's amazing. Yeah, I hear Ambien. I've actually never taken Ambien,
It's pretty cool.
but
You
I've
trip
heard
out.
you. Yeah, right. You
Yeah.
like hallucinate,
Well, what
or
happens
you do
is-
things without being aware of them, or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. But what happens is you take, and I'm not condoning this behavior. I'd like to make it very clear.
Ryan Smith
Please do
is,
not
though.
take this advice. However, you take like a double dose of Ambien and it's going to knock you right out. But what you do is you just push through that sleepy phase. And then all of a sudden you start seeing some weird stuff, like
Really?
full on hallucinations.
Oh, wow.
I typically would see like shadow people all over the place. You know, like
Wow.
standing in the room and like shadow shapes on the walls and things like that. It's almost like when you close your eyes and you like press real hard on your eyeball and you
Yes.
can kind of see that shape.
Yeah, I
It's
know
like
what you're talking
that,
about.
but in your waking vision.
Wow, that's terrifying.
Very strange. But, you know, it's also, you're kind of high and giggly and stuff like that. And it's easy to get Ambien and not feel bad about smoking weed.
Can
Did
you
I-
get on a bad trip on Ambien?
I'm sure you can. I never really had a bad trip with drugs.
We're gonna
I'm
find
kind of
out.
too laid back of a guy to really have a bad trip on drugs.
I remember Sean and Vince, my friends at the time. So I think Vince gave me the 12 caffeine pills. He gave me Ritalin.
Oh yeah, those yellow jackets.
And then I drank, and then I smoked something that was laced. And I
Yeah.
remember that was when I tried to race the train and was doing pull-ups from the banister on
that was a
second
bad
story.
night.
Yeah, you know, I bought some shoes from a drug dealer one time. I don't know what he laced them with, but I've been tripping all day.
Oh my god!
Courtesy of 48 and
Oh,
Incredibly
that
Short
was
Clean
even-
Keep them
Jokes.com.
going!
Conceptual.
Keep them
Does
going!
they have categories? How'd you find
Oh,
the context?
man. I've read this like 10 times already, and so I haven't like mostly memorized.
Oh my god!
I want to see
yeah.
Mike do
That's amazing.
stand-up. He's fixing his tie. He goes, anybody out there? Is
Tough
this thing
crowd.
on? Just, like Rodney Dangerfield. No respect.
No respect at all.
Oh man!
Goodness. Oh, well, let's all go home. Let's get down to the brass taxes, Sean.
All
as
right.
Logan Needham always says.
Brass taxes.
Take us there.
All right. Mike.
Yes, sir.
Paranormal. Do you even UFO? What are they? What do you think UFOs are? What do you think about the stories? What do you think about them defying physics? What do you think, Mike?
I UFO. I F with UFOs, if that makes sense. I love UFOs. So,
Spider. Sorry, continue. Sorry.
so we're talking UFOs, or are we talking aliens?
I want to go to aliens, but start with UFOs. So people sight them in the sky. They do some crazy turn that's against the law of physics. What do you think about that? Like, are the people crazy? Does it really happen?
I think that there is a significant. Okay, so I think most of the time when people see an object in the sky that's moving, in ways that are inexplicable, I think most of the time they're seeing military equipment that is yet to be released to the public.
Yes, let's go in.
I think that's most of the time what people are seeing. I also think that there are spacecraft that are not from this world, and I think there's a couple of reasons why that could be. One is when, like, a lot of people think that you can't really have aliens because, God only created humans in his image, and it never really talks about aliens in the Bible and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't explicitly say extraterrestrial being because they wouldn't have used those words to refer to it.
Okay.
But we do have some references in some of the apocalyptic literature of these living creatures. You know what I'm talking about? These living
eyes. And
eyes all over their face and bunch of wings and stuff.
Apocalyptic literature, sorry, like canon or like
Canon.
stuff that's okay.
Canon.
Because I wasn't sure if you meant like apocryphal.
No, I'm
like
talking
Enoch
like
or-
Zechariah and
Okay.
like Revelation stuff.
Yeah, Ezekiel, I'm pretty sure, describes a DeLorean at some point.
Yeah, right.
I'm pretty sure.
A chariot of iron that leaves fire in its wake.
Yeah.
I just made that up. That's not in the Bible. Anyway, just
Could
to
be.
clarify. It could be.
Neither is the rapture.
Hey, you want to talk about millennialism? We can go there.
Oh.
But, so there's these creatures, right? They're not called angels, and they're definitely not human, but they're these living creatures. They're got weird attributes, covered in eyes, got wings, all kinds of weird stuff going on. And, I'm just thinking, if I'm who I am right now, and I'm taken somewhere I've never been before, and I see a creature like this, I'm gonna go ahead and go, I think that's an alien. Right?
Yeah, not of this world.
Right. It's definitely not from Earth.
Yeah.
I've never seen it before. It doesn't resemble anything I've seen. I mean, there's like beings in the Bible that have wheels on them
Yep.
as a part of their body.
Yeah.
Right? 4 faces on a square with wheels on the side.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so first of all, that's partially metaphorical because a lot of the Bible is kind of using imagery to explain more deep concepts, but like also, what if that was kind of real? Like, we don't really know the difference. So there's space, I think, in the Bible for non-human, non-angel, extraterrestrial beings.
Has God visited those planets, do you think, to talk to them?
I don't know. I mean, C.S. Lewis has some interesting thoughts about that.
He has
Yeah,
a
he
dope
does.
sci-fi
He has a really-
trilogy
Yes,
I've
he
read.
does.
But
Yeah, it's really
But he
good.
has a great nonfiction "What If Aliens Exist" book.
Really?
Like a little booklet.
I
C.S.
gotta
Lewis
watch
does.
that.
It's
Or
fantastic.
I gotta read
Dude,
that.
it brings up, I thought it was I thought it was fun.
The
Interesting.
interesting thing is, we would hold, well, I won't put words in your mouth, but I believe that we would hold, if there were aliens from some other planet that they live on, we'll assume they live on a planet. God created that planet.
Absolutely.
God created those aliens.
Uh-huh.
And whether or not their plan for salvation is the same as ours, I don't know.
Well, I think that I think salvation specifically is a human thing. Because we were made in the image of God and we messed that image up. I don't know if an alien with eyes all over its face and 6 wings is necessarily made in God's image, because you see in Daniel, you have this one who is like a son of a man approaching the Ancient of Days.
Right.
So Jesus, the Son of Man, who he refers to himself as, and he's quoting this passage, every time he says the Son of Man, in the New Testament, he's quoting Daniel. Before he came into existence as Jesus, the man that we know, he already had a human form, because when Daniel sees him, he looks like the Son of a Man.
Yeah.
Right? So whether he had physical body and blood, I don't know. I don't think so. Probably not. But when God says he made us in his image, it's not just that he put his breath of life into us. It's also that he gave us the body that we have. The body that we have is made to look like God's divine body, right? So, maybe these aliens are not made in God's image, and maybe they're as culpable for sin as a dog would be. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good point.
Like, my dog's not going to pay for her sins, even though she's a terrible, horrible creature. I love my dog. She's awesome. But my dog's not going to pay for her sins.
She is a listener, so.
But she is affected by my sins.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
Like,
and by the sin in the world,
Exactly.
ambient sin or whatever.
Exactly. So maybe we attribute intelligence to the divine form of being a human.
Imago
right?
Dei and all that?
Exactly.
Or?
We
Okay.
attribute intelligence to that. So who's to say that we can't have an intelligent life form capable enough to create spacecraft that isn't an Imago Dei being that is culpable for sin the way that we are?
Are they capable of sinning?
I don't know. Are dogs capable of sinning?
I wonder that sometimes.
See what I'm saying?
But still part of creation.
Yeah.
And the crazy
exactly.
thing that you're talking about, if in the revelatory books or apocalyptic books, those beings, if they're aliens, are still worshiping God. And so they are giving assent. Well, at least the ones that I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
They are giving assent to God as their creator and as like the all-powerful being that's in the world. So yeah,
I think they could be worshiping God the same way my dog does. Not by words of praise and
absolutely,
and mental ascent, but by existing.
Exactly.
Like the mountains give glory to God, like creatures give glory to God, like space itself gives glory to God.
Yeah.
These intelligent beings might give glory to God that way, and the way that we attribute intelligence, like the way that we think about intelligence, I think we think too highly of it. I think that what actually makes us comprehend the world the way that we do as humans is our soul. It's not our brain. It's not our intelligence. It's our soul.
I guess you'd have to look at, cause we'd have to sit down with one of them, like their desires. Cause if they're intelligent enough to build something that could do space travel, I guess I'd have to sit down with them and go, so what does your culture look like? Do you have murder? Do you have rape? Do you have...
right.
What are your passions? Because Luther even talks about that, like, your passions and desire kind of drive that versus what if they... All right, and I'm just trying to play for Mike's side because I find this interesting. What if they really are highly intelligent, but maybe emotionless or relationally different? And they go, no, we're just pragmatic. We do that. We actually don't have murder. We don't have... We just... are designing things and making... I mean, and I guess it's possible,
well, think of this,
I want to know their desires.
Think of this, though. Dolphins, right? Highly intelligent creatures communicate miles and miles away through echolocation. They kill each other, murder, but are they culpable for murder?
Yeah, I think...
And
Axl Rose hit on that during his return after they broke up.
Did he?
He was all about dolphins, remember? He came back.
I thought it was all about weight gain. I didn't know he was all about
that
dolphins.
Too. I think because of his newfound love for dolphins, he was just all about dolphins for a while, and he was like so stoked on them because I think like I don't know if I'm making this up or not. I might be. But I heard somebody ask him, which was really funny. They go, "Hey man, you're
you
cool.
On Ambien?
Guns N' Roses was killer. What's with the dolphins, dude?" And he said something. He goes like, they're the most intelligent creature, but they don't have a morality, or they don't have, I guess what you're saying is a culpability for sin.
Yeah.
They're intelligent, yet they're still living in that wild way that, where it's like big fish eats little fish and this natural order, but still super intelligent to the point where they can, put balls on their mouths and balance it.
Bottle noses.
I smacked a dolphin once, and I'm not proud of it, but this is a time for Jeb.
You're going to hell for that one, Fast.
Jeb dared me, and it was for $40, which he didn't pay me, and I was 13.
Wow.
And that dolphin trusted
me. Did you
Where was
deck
the dolphin?
That dolphin? Was it a closed fist hit, or was it
no,
like
it was an open-handed
slap?
And he...
I just want to imagine you just like MMA dropping a dolphin.
No.
Putting the brass knuckies
on.
on.
And he splashed me, and I was like, I'm so sorry, Pierre. Like, I wanted to...
Pierre was the dolphin's name?
That's what I called him, because I had to give name to my sin.
Yes.
Well, it is interesting, because we can't assign sin based on, well, what's the intelligence level? So how would... I think this would be interesting.
Yeah, because...
How would we assign culpability of sin? So what is culpability of sin based on? We need to assign that.
I think primarily, or at least a major part of it, is defacing the image of God.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And so if they aren't image bearers...
Right.
By doing certain things, they aren't actively doing that, right?
Yeah. And they may... So, like, for example, you see in Revelation, the lion's going to lay down with the lamb, right? So they're not going to kill each other in the new heavens and the new earth.
Oh, that's a good point.
So maybe murdering one another as aliens, they might not be morally culpable for that, but that is not their intended design.
And I believe that when Adam and Eve sinned and brought sin into the world, it affected the universe.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just the earth.
Yeah. So
it's not like on another planet you're free from the effects
C.S. Lewis
of sin.
is the one that would disagree with you.
Probably.
He would say that, this is more of his sci-fi trilogy, but his kind of
he was where
humans
would spread it, I thought.
Yes, exactly. So
they
had
bring it.
Populations on other planets that had never had the fall.
Right.
Right. And then if humans reached those places, then they would bring the sin with them and kind of infect those places. But I do agree with you, Sean.
Yeah.
That
I don't want
the entire universe
I don't want to make it dark, but I don't know how to say this without making it dark. if oh, it's so bad. If an alien rapes another alien, whether they're image bearer or not, is there a way? I just don't know how that can
Lions do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this happens in the animal
mad
kingdom.
At those
But we would
lions,
assume,
obviously,
Scripture's not exclusive on this, but we would assume that because of the fall, sin affected the earth, not just like the crust of the earth,
right,
but everything, the universe. And so that rape in the animal kingdom happens specifically because it's a fallen status.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's not.
Does
the
a lion
fault.
understand the because if you can build a ship,
I don't think so.
Couldn't an alien understand like more what's? See, I wonder about that because they're understanding more. This is someone who's breathing, thinking, and I'm doing this to them.
Think of this. In the Old Testament, in the sacrificial system, in Leviticus chapter 1, God
I'm not even sure how to make a systematic theology about it. Go ahead.
God says to grab a spotless lamb without blemish and to sacrifice that, right? He doesn't say, grab a lamb who has never slandered anyone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
that's a good point.
It's the lamb is just sinless. It has never done anything in its life to make it culpable or not. It's just an animal. So if that thing is capable of, maybe depending on your theology, maybe it doesn't atone for sin, but it points to the pure sacrifice of Christ.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If it's capable of being that, then it probably isn't culpable for sin. In which case, do we attribute intelligence to the imago of God, or is intelligence something that can be given without being given the soul and the image of God? If intelligence can be given without being given the image of God, then you could have hyper-intelligent beings that are capable of traveling from galaxy to galaxy or star to star at least, and not necessarily being human. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Jesus doesn't have to go to a bunch of planets and die for their sins on all these planets.
My only argument against that would be, based on my limited knowledge, that angels committed sin.
Yes.
And I don't think we're created in the image of God, or at least not as nearly
not
in the
as
image
us.
of God.
They're made from him. His will come into creation, like his will made physical form, but they're still culpable for sin. See, I have like 50
they're
questions.
still culpable for sin, but
so interesting.
there is
and there's no redemption for.
There's no redemption. Yeah, there's no plan for salvation for fallen angels, which is interesting, or that we know of, I should say. Here's an interesting thing that we know of. I want to write a book, but let's be honest, I'm never going to get around to writing.
Let's be honest.
It's about. It's about.
What did you just say?
I said, let's be honest.
Let's be honest. Here.
Let's be honest.
Lesbian honest.
Dang it. You made it dirty. I'm just trying to be honest. Let's be honest.
Say aliens do show up, and they are, like you're saying, not created in the image of God, but they still have sinned, or sin is still affecting them, and they somehow, they're from planet
Glarbnar.
Remulak, Glarbnar, right?
Don't you bite my
And
style.
they show up in our atmosphere.
Uranus!
And it's like, it takes like 10 days. It's like Independence Day.
They
And they're
come
just
out of
sitting
Uranus
there.
and
they come out of the spaceship and they
Uranus.
say, hey, we're here. We have heard that the earth is going to be redeemed and heaven is going to meet earth. And so we've traveled all the way across the universe because we finally found earth and we want to be part of this
and it
redemption
turns out they're
story.
all Mormon.
And it turns out, actually, no, it turns out the Presbyterians ruined it all because the Presbyterians wouldn't let him join the church.
Correct.
And, and it got bad from there. And it involves like the speed of light and stuff like that. But my point is, like, here's the thing. The word of God is revelatory and complete and final, right?
Right.
And so we believe the word is the final authority, but we don't believe the word has absolutely exclusively everything in it that could possibly exist.
Absolutely.
It speaks into everything, but doesn't speak of everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there can be planets or intelligent life or whatever there may be out there that it doesn't speak of. And it's not necessarily heresy to consider that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though I do feel...
not at all. I
do feel like admitting...
He's not preaching this. That's the thing, though, too.
However, I would.
I was trying to... Dang it, and Sean.
But
Your nipples are distracting.
I feel like...
me, Sean.
I feel like there are people out there who would say,
Kirk Cameron?
This Mike Mumford guy that you guys had on, heretic, believes in aliens.
Yep.
And
well, they can keep downloading our videos and paying us money.
I think it's important
because we love that. No,
I think it's important
Seth,
for us.
This is not a video for the last time.
Seth still doesn't know. Homeschooled.
Do you know how the internet works?
Is your 8-track still working?
Yeah, it's still recording.
Okay.
Once this podcast gets on the YouTube,
I was worried that your reel was gonna stop spinning and
no, it's
wouldn't
good.
be able to
Hasn't
listen to
melted
Fogelberg
yet.
later.
So here's another thing to consider.
Is it? Oh, go ahead.
Right. So we've got it's not a joke. I'll pull one of those out soon. So we've got the concept that there might be intelligent life forms that are not made in the image of God, that are not culpable for sin, but are hyper intelligent and can create spacecraft and might be visiting our planet for some reason or another.
And is not threatening to your faith.
Exactly. This is just
they're not Muslims.
This is believing
or Democrats.
Or
Democrat Muslims. Dun dun dun. Hillary Clinton comes out of the ship. I knew it.
Little Close Encounters reference
I like
for those
it.
of you
That's
who
such
remember. Okay, so
I do that
we
with mashed potatoes, by
Pepperidge
the way,
Farm.
even though I
still,
haven't
you
seen
still
an alien.
do it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So we've got, just to freak people out, like, Sean, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Shut up.
So we've got the concept: there might be aliens that are not created in the image of God. They are hyper intelligent and therefore are not culpable for sin, like we would be. And it would take just as much faith to believe that they exist as it does to believe in dolphins or dogs, right?
Sure.
We just might not see them because they might, like a bear in the woods, be freaked out by us and bounce as soon as we get close. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, here's another thing to consider. In Revelation, when the new heavens and the new earth come together and God says, behold, the dwelling place of God is now with man, and John sees this great city descending from the sky, he sees a city descending from the sky. This might be a space station. I'm
Dang.
not. Okay, so
it's a cube too, right?
It's a cube, right? And it descends from the sky and it comes down to earth. So here's the thing: the Book of Revelation is apocalyptic literature, which was written by John to the churches at the time. So it's not all pointing towards the future. This is where you kind of get into amillennialism. I told you I'd bring it back, but you have a lot of things that are like the mark of the beast. You know, people say, "Oh, it's going to be a RFID chip that they put in your hand that's got your credit card."
I already
number on
got the chip.
Yeah, yeah, right. They got chips on your credit cards. That's what those things are. It's the mark of the beast. But if you read it and you look at it and you know your Bible, you're remembering, oh, the mark of the beast goes on your head and on your hand.
Yeah.
Well, the Shema, right, in Deuteronomy chapter 6, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. You're supposed to have it on your hand, written on your hand, and wear it as a frontlet between your eyes.
Oh yeah,
right.
What's that called? Not refractory.
It's a reverse Shema. Yeah, it's a reverse Shema.
Olfactory.
So he's not saying that there's gonna be a tattoo that goes on your head or a microchip that gets placed in your skin. He's saying anyone in all of history that doesn't love the Lord their God with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength bears the mark of the beast. Right? So the same thing is true with the city descending out of the sky. If you remember the story of the Tower of Babel in Genesis, we built a city up to heaven. And God says, no, that's not going to work. I have to bring the city down from the sky, down from the heavens. I have to come to you. You can't come to me. So there's a metaphorical theme going on here where God is just explaining the gospel through this vision to John. But we also don't know how real this stuff was. Some of these things might have actually been future events. We just don't know exactly. We know for sure that it's talking about the Bible and the things that we know of so far. We know that for sure, but we don't know for sure exactly how this is really going to pan out in the future. So, if the city of God does in fact descend out of the sky in the form of a cube, that to me sounds a whole lot like a spaceship, a really big spaceship. And if heavenly beings, these living creatures and possibly angels, travel through space using a giant spaceship, then maybe they're smaller ones. Maybe angels aren't as spiritual as we think they are. Maybe they're more physical. You think about Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah, and the angels were physical enough to where everyone in the city thought they could have sex with them. Right? That was the whole point. They were like, give us those men. They found them to be attractive, almost in like a human-like kind of essence, and wanted physically to be with them. So maybe these angels aren't like walk-through-wall spirits. They are physical maybe not flesh and blood, but physical beings that have to use some kind of mode of transportation to get around. You see what I'm saying? So maybe spaceships are that. And maybe some of them are angels, maybe some of them are demons. And the Bible would use angels and demons as words to describe these things. But maybe in modern terms we would call them the Greys, or the Greens, or the Nordic Aliens, or the Anunnaki. Have you heard of those? I think that's how you pronounce it.
I think so.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the Nordic Aliens?
No, that's not Thor.
Swedish?
No. Well, that's kind of like where Thor
Dutch?
comes from. The Nordic Aliens. Yeah, no, it's when people immigrate to America from Scandinavia.
I'm pretty sure Trump talked about Yeah,
No.
Trump has talked about
No,
the
dude.
Nordic aliens
So
and
he-
the South American ones. He's
has he
terrible.
really?
Yeah, he wants to build a wall.
Yeah.
So
the
in
wall
the
across the
50s,
Atlantic.
in the 50s, there was a resurgence of these things called Nordic Aliens, which was not a resurgence, but a surge of these things that people refer to as Nordic Aliens, where they saw these beings that were kind of larger than life, like extra tall, extra big, but they had blonde hair and blue eyes.
Oh my gosh,
And
I
they
have
could
something.
read your thoughts, and they were very benevolent and all this kind of stuff.
Aryans.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, those could have been aliens, but I mean, also some of the descriptions, not the color of their skin or the color of their hair or eyes, but the descriptions of how they acted, very benevolent, and they could read your thoughts, and they could help you. That kind of sounds like an angel too, you know what I'm saying? Like a physical angel showing up, a very helpful being from another planet. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that could be an angel. Easy.
Definitely.
It
Nick
didn't
Cage
say
did
their
that one
skin
time.
color.
They're white. They're Nordic
What
aliens.
a coincidence.
Well, no. Here's
The
something
dusty
that I want to
whites
talk
come
about.
in again.
We just kind of hit on this,
Tiki torch whites.
and these are not Tiki Torch whites, but they're so among Native Americans and also
Please give us a Native American represent.
Incan, and there's some certain I can't think of the tribe name in South America,
Aztec?
and it's not Aztec, but it's something else that's a
Irish.
popular name. And Egyptians all share legends about very tall, very pale, red-headed individuals
With
who
no souls.
were benevolent, and they treated them as gods, not like mean, sacrifice your children
kid, yeah.
gods, but like nice gods.
Yeah.
And there's evidence to suggest that those tall redheads gave certain people the ability to create things like pyramids or laser cut rocks to fit in a giant
Yeah.
wall
The
and stuff
Peruvian Incas.
Yeah, that's it. Incas.
Yeah, the Incas.
And so, and the weird thing is, on separate continents, there's pyramids. And both the pyramids are constructed in a similar fashion, but not the same. But both of the kind of like strange worship was around these tall, red-headed people.
Yeah.
Here's where it gets really weird. Actually, no. Here's where it gets kind of weird.
I think
in
we're way
addition to
beyond really weird.
We're way.
In addition to that, you talk about the Nephilim that it speaks about in Genesis,
Uh-huh.
right? Which is like the fallen angels, or it says like the gods among you, or the men who look like gods, or depending on the translation,
Sons of God.
sons of God.
Ejaculate
children with
like
the daughters of
donkeys.
men.
Go ahead.
They,
What?
yeah, they had
in the Bible.
intercourse with women of earth.
Yes.
And their offspring became men of great renown.
Right.
Then you get to
Were
is
you
it
choking down a burp or what?
is it Peter? I think it might be Peter. And Peter talks about in the New Testament, he goes, one day in the future, right before or right after the millennium, one day things will be just like the days before Noah. Well, this Nephilim story happens right before Noah.
Right.
And
Part
then
of why the flood came.
refers to hell as Tartarus.
Yeah.
And it's the only place Tartarus is ever used in the Bible. Tartarus was known as the place where people imprisoned the Titans,
Yeah.
the men of great renown from a different religion. And so that's where it gets kind of weird, because I'm just like wondering, like, is he just being contextual and using the term Tartarus to make it sense? Or is he talking about actually these Nephilim are imprisoned waiting to break out one day?
Yeah, that's when it says that Jesus descended into death and then he essentially preached the gospel to those who are in prison.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, in our current culture, pyramids are somehow recognized as this thing of power. And we've all seen the Illuminati thing where you can find a little pyramid or a triangle somewhere or another. But there's a pyramid on our dollar. There's a pyramid in all these places. The very interesting thing, though, is that George Washington, most likely, very tall, very pale redhead. R.J. Reynolds, owner of Camel cigarettes. Tall.
Smooth every time.
Redhead.
Sponsoring Tales from the Ditch. Go ahead.
It's just enough to wonder about, because the very interesting thing to me is, like,
so you're saying they're the Nephilim?
I'm saying that, R.J. Reynolds, owner of Camel cigarettes, is trying to open Tartarus to let out the Titans, the men of great renown, and we will have to fight them.
Yes.
And that's how the millennium
now
works.
we're where I want to be.
And it turns out that the sword of the Spirit is not a metaphor. There is a real one. And when we find the sword of the Spirit and and pull it out of the stone, which is Peter, it must be impaling Peter beneath the basilica, whatever, St. Peter's Basilica.
Yes.
It's a sword impaling Peter, and that will be the key to defeating the Nephilim that get released from prison.
Mike's next sermon is going to be so interesting.
We live in...
I'm a professional conspiracy theorist.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're here. We live in... That's why we could talk about our millennial views, because of conspiracy theories.
Yep.
We live in northern Nevada, where we have Pyramid Lake. Pyramid Lake.
Coincidence? I think not.
Is the one lake besides one other that has these kiwi fish. The other kiwi fish?
Just say that
in
real fast.
China.
Just say.
So we got kiwi fish here in China. Only places on the planet. There's
China,
clearly a tunnel going from Pyramid Lake
Battlestar Galactica,
through Tartarus
Bullshit.
to China.
Bullshit.
That's what I think.
I thought you were saying that as a fact. Oh my gosh. You scared me for a second.
I think that's possibly true. So either way,
it goes through the core of the earth?
No.
That's where Tartarus is.
That's what I'm saying. But that is true, that's the only place there's those kiwi.
Hey, do you guys ever watch Kung Pao Enter the Fist?
Oh, yeah.
You remember
Yes.
That's what kiwi fish reminds me of. Okay, so we've talked about the potential for intelligent life forms that are non-Imago Dei. We've talked about aliens and demons potentially requiring spacecraft to travel.
Satan attacking Uranus.
Talked about a little bit of Nephilim.
What about Sasquatch?
Okay, so yeah, there's
he just a hairy guy from Minnesota, or is he real?
It was my nickname in college, actually.
Hairy guy
from Minnesota. Get over here. Drink this beer.
No, Sasquatch.
Oh.
Also hairy guy from...
I was like, Mike's from
hairy
Minnesota? We just busted this wide open.
Sasquatch. So, I don't really have a strong opinion about Sasquatch, but...
What? Take a stand, Mike.
So there's theories
I knew you'd be on the fence about this.
There's theories that Sasquatch is a spirit. Like a guardian of the forest, kind of a spirit. Which is why he's hard to track, is because when he shows up and manifests, you've got footprints and a physical body.
Like
but
the
then
EPA.
Like the what?
The EPA. They're not really anything physical. They're just in spirit.
So Sasquatch could be that. And then he disembodies when he's through doing whatever it is that he's gonna do. There's also theories that he's like a hyper-evolved ape, like the missing link between ape and man. That's a theory. One thing that's really interesting is I used to be an optician for years before I was a minister, and I had a patient who quit his job sold everything he owned to move to Alaska and hunt for Sasquatch.
Are you serious?
I am dead serious.
Really?
Dead serious. I'm 100, and
We're gonna be hunted down after this. You know this. Mike has unveiled truth.
So what he told me was that he was driving in his truck with, I think it was his girlfriend at the time, maybe soon to be wife, and their truck kind of broke down, or I think what they did is they hit a snowdrift, right? Because it's really cold in Alaska, presumably. I've never been, but they hit a snowdrift, and then all of a sudden the car got lifted up on one side. And he thought it was a bear, and as he looked out the window, he could see that it was more of like an ape-type creature. And then so the thing held up the car with one hand, he says, for like a solid 30 seconds, and was like doing like animal roars and things like that, and then eventually lets the thing go. The car drops back down. He's got like repair bills to prove that he had to go like fix the car from what had happened, which, you know, you'd have to do anyway if you hit a snowdrift. Just saying.
Sure.
So that was his experience, is he actually met Sasquatch face to face. The thing tipped his car up on its side, and so he legit sold everything he owned and moved to Alaska to hunt this thing down. I have never heard from him since. I'm assuming that a Sasquatch ate him.
I feel like
that guy
half these stories could be explained by Sean. Because they're like, oh yeah, this hairy guy came up and Sean. They're like, this guy came up in a weird language. Sean, when he's drinking. This guy I'm like, the aliens is the only one where I go, yeah, maybe. The rest I go, that was just Sean. And Sean, admit it.
Sean on a rough
night. You were in Alaska. You were hairy. You're hairy. Folks, you can't see it, but Sean is a hairy man.
I'm not that big though.
I think I'm hairier than Sean.
Are you?
Yeah, and I'm very Scandinavian.
Because Sean every season cuts off fur from his skin so that my family can have clothing for the winter years.
Knitted sweaters.
Yeah,
I do.
That'd be the itchiest sweater.
But it keeps us warm, Mike. And we always thank Sean as our silent guardian in the dark, shaving his furs for my family. And we give the normal annual sacrifice.
I think, as far as Sasquatch goes,
Sean's like, we should stop tracking him and you should just back out.
The hard thing for me is like trying to track. I've tried to go hunting before, and I've tried to track animals, and it is so hard. Yeah. If an animal doesn't want to be seen, they are very good at hiding.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine that. The hard part for Sasquatch is like, I've tried desperately to like get away from society, you know? Mm-hmm. When I was a teenager, I'm like, oh, I just need to like, you know, like that Into the Wild thing where I'm just trying to leave and get away.
You've tried to white fang me before too.
Go,
you stupid dog! I'm like, I'm a person.
Old Buck too, and
you threw a rock at me, and I ran out into the snow.
So
are you saying that it would be hard to be Sasquatch and to not be seen all the time?
Yeah, because what I'm saying is like I've gone as far away from. I've tried to go as far away from society as possible. I guess not really, but like in the Sierras, you know, all the way from Canada down to Mexico. I've tried to like find these remote places. Uh-huh. And as soon as I'm like as far as possible, I think I can get from any type of civilization, like I step onto this golf course.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Or like I hear a train, or I see a highway like right up ahead. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like there's a lot of remote places, but those remote places are also pretty close to like somebody's, Babyface Edmonds winter ranch, you know?
Right.
And so it would be hard to be a Sasquatch if you were a Sasquatch and not get discovered.
You're speaking from experience?
Yeah, exactly.
Just admit
I've tried so hard.
Just admit it.
These were just my solitude days.
People think photos of me. Sasquatch. Yeah, we know. Like
why do I walk like that?
You're still my friend. I have a photo. All right, you and I were up in the hills.
I got back problems. That's why I walk like that.
Bacchiati. Do you remember when? All right, it's the hills on Pyramid out there where people go. All right, I took a photo of you going like this. Remember?
No,
and it looks exactly like the. Oh, I'm gonna find. It looks like the Sasquatch photo.
Really?
And I was like, and that was the day I was like, I know this terrible truth, but I will not reveal it.
We'll post this photo in the show notes.
I'm gonna find it.
No, we won't
have to put it.
There's gonna be no photos in there.
Yeah, Sasquatch is interesting. I have a lot of friends who would defend Sasquatch, like to the burger, like Tyler Macaluso we've had on this podcast. Avid post-millennial Trump supporter and Sasquatch aficionado.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so Sasquatch, I think that's why the woodland spirit is a little more believable, because of the civilization stuff, you know. I think the most likely thing, if there is a Sasquatch, is it's a hyper-intelligent ape thing. And like you said, if an animal doesn't want to be found, they're really good at hiding. And if he's smarter than an ape, then he's probably even better than anything that we've ever seen before, as far as hiding and...
Yeah, if he's smart enough.
Yeah, right.
And like, if he's bigger, if he's like this big apex predator, like it probably would be easier for him or her, I guess.
Them.
I don't discriminate.
They.
Not all apes. Hashtag.
It would be easier to not only survive in a difficult situation, but also to stay away from civilization as much as possible.
Exactly. But the woodland spirit protector would also explain why he's so hard to find. It's because he only materializes when he needs to protect a certain sacred place.
Right.
Right?
Indian burial ground. Or...
Things like that.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is entirely implausible. You know, I don't... So here's something that's really interesting, I think, is... You talk about angels and demons being these spirits, you know, these walk-through-wall spirits, I call them, because people... think of them as these like almost ghost, like apparition type things.
Right.
You know?
Not corporeal.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't think we really have a whole lot to go off of in the Bible to assume that. Like we think that demons are these like shadowy figures that like bump in the night and try to scare you and stuff like that. And, man, is that Sean?
Picture that blurry but hairy. You're Sasquatch! Admit it, you freaking liar!
Okay, hold on. Before we go off back to Sasquatch.
I'm listening. I'm paying attention.
So
we've got
these, you know, we think of them as these shadowy figures that bump in the night and try to scare you. But demons in the Bible don't typically show themselves. They don't typically walk up to you and do anything or even try to sneak up on you, or typically it's so subversive that you don't even notice them. Right? Like the serpent in the garden, he doesn't like try to scare them. He just tries to convince them that God's word isn't completely infallible.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So like, why would a demon show up in my bedroom and be like, booga booga booga, and try to freak me out? I think it's more likely that we don't completely understand the human consciousness and the soul, and that there possibly is some kind of echo of a human person after they die, and that might be those shadowy figures and presences that we can physically see and definitely sense.
So, like, for example, I know that this is borrowing from modern American horror cinema, but let's say a hotel where a lot of atrocities happen.
Somewhere in California, I'm guessing?
Maybe.
That hotel's been closed for 50 years. Whoa!
I heard you can check out anytime you like, but you can't ever leave.
You can't ever leave. So let's say something happened like that.
Yeah.
Theoretically, there's some type of, maybe you're saying like dimensional or some type of thing that can still be reverberating through reality.
Exactly.
That's not something that we naturally pick up.
Right.
That could still exist.
Right. So there's a theory, if you want to get into quantum mechanics, which is always fun.
I do.
We're both scholars. Go ahead.
Quantum particles, they exist in probabilities, right?
Yeah.
They can exist in multiple places at the same time until you observe them, right? So the observer, changes the outcome of the quantum probability by observing it. So somehow, some way, in a way that we don't fully understand, the human consciousness can actually change physical reality when it comes to quantum particles.
Right.
Okay. That's just the baseline. Now, everything has these quantum particles and, atoms and electrons all have these things in them. So how much does this affect our actual world? We don't know. It could be nothing. It could never really affect us. It could affect us a whole lot, but we're not exactly sure. One theory is that every probability of everything ever is being lived out and happening in what you call the multiverse. That every probability branches off into a new, space and time reality where there's a universe in which Sean is on the far end of the table and I'm in the middle, right?
Right.
And there's a universe where I can still drink PBR instead of having
Where
to be gluten-free.
Seth graduated college
and drink
Sean has
Meyer
the
lemon seltzer liquor, which is awesome. So every probability has a universe like that. Now there's a theory that consciousness could work on a quantum level where if you exist in a million different universes as Sean, then your consciousness might not just be located in this current universe. Your consciousness might be
shared
consciousness throughout all the universes that have ever existed that have Sean in them. And that when you die in this universe, your consciousness just skips to the one that you're not dead in. Right? And so every time we go through something like that, we just skip to the next one. And so I don't necessarily buy that. I think death is more clear cut when it comes to the scriptures and how death works, especially in Hebrews. It says it's appointed for man to die once and then comes judgment, right? So you don't really have a lot of space for multiple universes and having death make your consciousness skip around. But I do think that the human consciousness is more physical than just a product of the electricity in your brain. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a theory that, I'll get back to the multiverse thing in a second, but there's a theory that the thing that makes what we think, so our consciousness, what it is actually the invisible material that holds the universe together. Dark matter, right? And it has like a physical substance, that we tap into as our experience of reality, which would explain the shared consciousness phenomenon, which is proven and completely true, and it would explain the human being's ability to predict and affect the future, which is absolutely empirically true, which I can get into if you guys are interested in. Pretty crazy stuff. I
want to hear more about both of those things, though.
Okay.
At some point.
So, what's the dude's name? There's a scientist named Rupert Sheldrake. Totally worth looking up. He did a TED Talk on this concept. Well, he did a TED Talk about the laws of science, and how the fact that science has laws means it's not science anymore. Because science should always be questioning everything. That's how science works, right? If you have laws, it becomes a religion, a dogma, a doctrine, which science, in essence, is not that, right? And so he's questioning all the laws of science, and one of his main areas of focus is consciousness. And because one of the laws of science is that the mind exists in the brain. So the way to explain that is kind of like we're in a virtual reality headset, right? Our eyes receive all the light and data of the world around us, and that light and data goes into the brain, and the brain is this weird private viewing room where you process all that data, interpret it, and then make decisions based on the data that you've received, right? And so you have basically like a TV screen inside of your head functionally, and that's how science would say the mind works. His argument is that the mind is not inside the brain, and that it's less tangible than that and more of a field than it is an actual biological function. And so the way he tested this was by, there's a couple things. So there's the mind field experiment, and then there's the shared consciousness experiment. The mind field experiment was done through studying the phenomenon of being stared at. So you can physically have a physical reaction to people looking at you. And that doesn't make any sense when it comes to what we currently think is true about science, mind and consciousness, right? And so he determined that statistically, more often than not, people can feel that they're being looked at, even through closed circuit cameras, which is really interesting. So you don't even have to be in physical proximity of this person to feel this phenomenon, which would suggest that the data being received by the viewer is also accessible to the person being looked at, somehow through some sort of shared consciousness.
Huh.
Okay? Now, there's more, this is a more specific shared consciousness experiment. So there was, I think same scientist, different study was, so they had a bunch of control groups, individuals, in separate rooms, and they were asked a question with no answer, which is something to the degree of, what color is John's dog? Right. There's no John. There's no dog. This is a completely fictitious scenario. And all the guesses for John's dog were completely all over the map, right? When they didn't have an answer, they get a new group of test subjects in, and they have a computer randomly generate a color, and then one of the people giving the test, reads that answer. Once they read that answer, the statistic probability of someone guessing it correctly goes up like exponentially.
Really?
Yeah. So that information, once it is given to the human consciousness, is more readily available to all human beings.
So the person reading it,
They don't say it out loud.
Yeah.
They just read it.
They read it, and then their consciousness is accessible to potentially everybody.
Correct. It's kind of like, the way I kind of think of it and describe it is like your phone, right? If you have Spotify or Apple Music on your phone, you don't have those songs on your phone, but you access them through your phone, right? So your brain is like your phone, and the information that gets into your phone is just streamed to it from the collected consciousness that...
The cloud,
essentially.
Yeah.
The cloud mind is where all the information comes from. Which is why, if you've ever had this experience, which I've had it several times, I come up with an idea and I'm like, oh, that's $1 million idea. I should totally do that. And then 6 months later, Brookstone comes out with a freaking massage chair or something like that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't know if you're old enough to remember Brookstone, but if you are.
I know what it is.
Yeah. So it's like that. It's like, you have a great idea and you think it's this original thing that you just came up with, and it's really not. It's just something that we've collectively discovered, and one person's going to actually do it. But we all have access to that information, which is where ideas come from. That's the theory is that's where ideas come from.
Now, question, and I don't know how familiar you are with this, but I stopped smoking weed a really long time ago. Mm-hmm. I've done a lot of counseling with people who smoke weed, and now smoking weed is more of a transcendent activity than it was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, Seth and I just wanted to escape and get high and feel good and laugh. Now there's this third eye concept. Mm-hmm. And that third eye I've had explained to me, and like I said, I'm too young to understand it, but that third eye is supposedly this higher consciousness where you're elevating yourself to gain with everybody else's consciousness. Uh-huh. And people will say it's not just like weed that opens your third eye. There's like meditation or,
they've showed studies with your brain chemistry. Once you meditate, there's
kinds of crazy things. And so is that kind of a similar concept? Would you say? Do you know anything about that?
I know a little bit about that, not specifically with marijuana, but there's a lot of studies happening right now about the medical applications for psilocybic mushrooms, which is magic mushrooms, right? And that people are having these experiences while they're on mushrooms that are changing their lives forever. They're like realizing things about themselves that they needed to realize to have like a psychological breakthrough. You know, they're so they're testing it on terminally ill patients and people who are desperately anxious of dying and afraid of dying, and they guide them through a guided meditation on psilocybic mushrooms, on psilocybin. I don't make them eat mushrooms, but they give them a dose of psilocybin. They lead them through a guided meditation, and afterwards they lose their fear of death.
Wow.
Which is really interesting. I don't think that's a great idea.
No.
Because I feel like the fear of death is really important to the human condition.
Sure.
Because that's like why the law works. The law works because if you don't follow the law, we're going to kill you, right? So if you don't fear death, then there's total anarchy and chaos.
Yes.
So we need some fear of death. But the interesting thing is that there's some understanding gained by like taking a substance like that gives you some sort of just extra awareness of the way things are and the way things...
Vulnerability, maybe.
Yeah, openness, possibly, to just the way things are. I think that can go totally sideways.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, you open yourself up to that kind of stuff. The Bible talks about, a demon coming in and possessing you and oppressing you, and you cast out one demon and 7 more move in if the Holy Spirit's not in there. Like, all that stuff. I think that drugs can really open that door, and I've experienced a lot of that stuff. But what's really interesting is asceticism. You know what asceticism is?
Yeah, like reducing all of your experience to as little as possible.
Exactly. So this is like fasting and silence and solitude and things that we would consider to be spiritual disciplines.
Yeah.
At extreme levels can induce a similar state of mind, like Seth was saying, the meditation. So you think about Jesus in the wilderness for 40 days, eating nothing. He might have actually been having an experience like that that's more the way God intended it to happen instead of taking mushrooms. Maybe God intended for us to actually have these experiences, but not through drugs, but through prayer and meditation.
Like a very human-centric experience.
He built it into our bodies.
Yeah.
We don't have to take drugs. He built this into our bodies.
Wow.
Through asceticism and spiritual discipline. So if you want to have like a crazy experience with God and really hear him and hear his voice and be present with him, just fast and pray, man. Like, I have a friend at Living Stones who is very charismatic in her history of churches, and she was talking to me about fasting. She does a 30-day fast once a year.
Jeez.
Oh my god.
30 days, an entire month. And it's not like, I just eat nuts. It's like, no, nothing. Like water.
Wow.
That's it. And she's like, I can tell you, brother, that when I'm on that fast, I can hear the voice of God.
Wow.
And I'm like, you can hear it? And she's like, I can hear it. And I'm like, maybe that's what she's doing. Maybe she's tapping into this human ability to transcend the things that we take for granted, like physical space and time, and actually tap into the consciousness of God. Because that's my
crazy.
theory. My theory about this whole shared consciousness thing is because we have evidence that it exists. We have evidence a little bit about how it works. I think that the human soul is that consciousness, and that the human soul is an extension of God's consciousness. I essentially think that our consciousness is the imagination of God. And that when he breathed that breath of life into Adam's lungs, it was him giving the gift of the divine state of being, which is the mental capacity of the Imago Dei.
Wow.
I spent 5 minutes looking up Havoc from X-Men because I
know where you're going. Go ahead.
Here's the thing. There's a point where he dies, but he dies at the same time as a Havoc from a different multiverse, from a different universe. Mm-hmm. And they actually at one point go, in every universe, you are this person. It's slightly different, but you're this person. Yep. And he even talks about the nexus of all realities, like there's something drawing them all together.
Yep. That's called Yahweh.
And and here's the funny thing. He says it's a power that I can't quite explain, but Sean, put back on your shirt and pants. Sean.
Sasquatch thing.
Merkelberry Moss. But it's interesting that he even says, he goes, I feel like I know these things and feel these things from different experiences, different things, but I don't know why. But I feel connection to them. And I was looking up because I was trying to think of the word nexus, because he talks about in every reality there's a Havoc. That's the character's name all the people who are nerds. But they're all this variable. And I was trying to look it up because I was like, no, what you've talked, because here's the thing, comic books get into this all the time. They talk about multiverses, DC, Marvel, all of them. And it's just such an interesting thing because, all right, recently one of the new theories, even scientifically, is, because here's the thing, with science, I believe science is supposed to show kind of like what or how things work. It's not supposed to be philosophy or answer why. But it's been taken out of its proper sphere and said, no. We don't need philosophy. Dawkins is like, philosophy's dead. Yeah. They've taken out its proper sphere. When it's supposed to say how stuff works, not why. But one of their new theories is and this is the normal question.
They, the science people.
They, aka Democratic Muslims. No.
You're a terrible human.
Because here's a natural question. If you bring philosophy into science, when someone, or just a basic question, if someone says the Big Bang, a lot of people, the natural question is, okay, what caused that? And if you bring the next thing, the natural question, okay, well, what caused it? There's always this, infinite regression. Always of what's the catalyst? What's the catalyst? The newest theory is this multiversal thing of, well, maybe there's all these universes. Maybe there was one that facilitated this. And even with this new theory of, well, this universe was expanding and it caused this universe to expand and then this caused the Big Bang. It still gets back to a question every single time of, well, what was the catalyst? Because there's always something that starts it. And they're not all scientists are these, everyone makes them out like these evil people trying to destroy God.
Right.
A lot of them are really like just asking why. But even they admit, even the atheists, they go, the question that always comes up is, well, what caused that? And it's funny, in all these theories, they still haven't gone down to, well, what caused that without a catalyst? Because they even have a new theory of, well, what if there's this decaying matter? I'll look it up. There's a theory. I can even post it on our website.
Really interesting theory that answers that
Because
question.
I talked to Tony Mache about it, and they had decaying matter, and there's this negative and positive. They're working, and maybe it caused this combustion, and there's an explosion. Even in this newest theory, they asked the guy doing it, okay, well, what caused that? And he goes, well, it could have been self-evident, or maybe it did itself. He goes, but it's hard to measure, because you're going to the beginning of the universe that none of us have been there and saying, how do we measure matter that we can't quite see? How do we talk about gravity? Can gravity exist without time? Can time exist without gravity? Because even the light speed thing, if you go past light speed, time becomes relative. There's so many questions. And it's all theoretical stuff. And even this guy, because everyone frames scientists as the enemy, even this guy was honest enough to go, no, you could still ask the question of, who initiated it?
Yeah.
But there's all these, they're past the Big Bang now. Yeah, they have multiversal, then they have decaying matter that somehow existed. But they never get to a core of, but what's the first catalyst? But he admitted, he goes, I have to admit though, the universe probably had to have had a beginning. And he was debating with, dang it, he's the Christian guy who he's actually respectful when he talks to him. God forbid.
Yeah, I know the dude. Oh gosh, what's his name?
Dang it, Tony! My brother-in-law Tony quotes him all the time because he actually will talk with him.
Chuck
and
Missler,
Jerry Falwell,
Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, Jerry. Dang it, I have it bookmarked too.
It's
who's the Christian guy who? Greg, get on this.
I gotta mention.
I genuinely thought there was a real Greg when I was listening. Jigs up, no real Greg.
There isn't a Greg.
Sorry, Greg. We just pretend that you don't exist.
While you guys are looking that up, I just want to say, first of all of a sudden this became the Joe Rogan podcast somehow really quickly, but
without weed, we didn't even need weed to do that. That's
I know.
crazy. Did we, Sean?
What was in that dinner?
Yeah,
no,
go ahead.
Here's
Sean.
what I want to say is that there's a lot of Christian listeners that will bristle at this conversation simply because
Mike still affirms Jesus. He still loves Jesus.
I love Jesus so
does
much.
Sean.
Yeah, but there's some discovery of the unknown or even questioning the unknown that Christians are not comfortable with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
hold on. Sorry, this isn't the Christian guy.
Okay.
Cosmologist Alexander Vilenkin believes the Big Bang wasn't a one-off event, but merely one of a series of Big Bangs. And dude.
Oh yeah, that's a really interesting theory. So there's this theory that everything wants to return to a state of stillness, right? Everything ever, if you leave it for long enough, will return to a state of stillness.
Okay.
yeah,
But
meteorology on Earth, scaling it down a little bit, meteorology is 100% based on that.
Yeah. So that being said, I forget what it's, thermodynamics something or other. I forget exactly what it is. But that being said, if you add the concept of eternity to everything trying to be still, you have these periods of time where nothing exists, technically, because light and heat are one and the same, and heat is generated by motion, right? Now there's another theory that says that everything has a random motion to it that will never stop. While it isn't expending energy to achieve that motion, it's always going, because there's just things in the atmosphere and things in the universe, they're going to be bumping into each other. given the concept of eternity to back it, those particles will eventually form shapes. Like if you left a cloud of smoke into a vacuum of a box. Eventually, if you give it eternity...
William Lane Craig. Sorry, go ahead.
If you give it eternity, it won't just be a ambiguous cloud of smoke. It'll form a circle. And sometimes it'll form a square. And even if it's for just a blip of a moment, it'll form my face.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If you give it eternity to where it can take every possible form ever in the concept of eternity. So the theory is that the universe is this floating cloud of nothingness. But then after an eternity of time, that floating cloud of nothingness randomly assimilated into what we know as our actual physical universe because things took shape. I think that's possible and even a probable explanation for the Big Bang. I just think it's facilitated by God.
Because he's...
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So it's the dude, these guys' names are good. Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem. And even here's the thing, William Lane Craig, actually, this is what I appreciate. He had an email correspondence with him. Like, talked to them about it. And here's the issue with it. Here's why, alright, and it's funny, he pissed off Christians and atheists. With Vilenkin, some said, this implies that you think there was a beginning to the universe. That there was a beginning. That doesn't just go on and on. He says, I think if there's an end, logically there's a beginning. William Lane Craig. All right, this is why I appreciate it. I'm not saying I'm going to agree with everything on the guy. I always have to say this because I do take it seriously as a pastor stating things. He at least, dude, in his correspondence with William Lane Craig, who's a believer, totally respectful. He asked all his questions, and the reason William Lane Craig emailed him is William Lane Craig was debating with a guy who was stating Vilenkin's theorem, and William Lane Craig felt like the guy was misrepresenting him, so he emailed the man himself and actually got like 3 emails back about what are you saying. And so he made people mad with saying there was a beginning, because that made some people mad. It made some Christians mad because he didn't say it was God in the beginning. So just, dude, William Lane Craig, he's the one Tony quotes. Tony really likes him. We have him on podcast episode, I don't care, but it was a bad recording. But he's a smart dude. Tony's working on his PhD in biochemistry.
Yeah.
Is the guy you're thinking about the Christian debater Frank Turek?
No, it was William Lane Craig. Yeah, sorry. It wasn't
gotcha.
Frank Turek. Vilenkin was the theorem, and Lane Craig was the guy who corresponded with him. And Lane Craig, I do want to say, finished his PhD. I want to say he did, because it was a great correspondence, but they went back and forth on that, no, there has to be a beginning. Because infinite regression, I'm sorry, there's always a question. Well, what caused that? And I agree with you, Mike. I look and go, okay, this is possible, but I'm still going to say, I think God did that then. It's God who... There has to be some catalyst.
Absolutely.
The thing of just stuff happens without... I don't know. It just gets into so many things of
Eternity is the answer to the probability anomaly.
Yeah.
Right? If there's eternity, then everything exists at some point or another.
And so you're saying, like, potentially, if our solar system is 100 million years old or whatever, I don't know what they say.
Whatever.
The planet is 65 million years or something like that. That is just one of those phases that occurs, that has to occur within eternity.
The theory is that there's probably been there's been an infinite amount of universes that have come and gone before us, and an infinite amount that will come and go after us.
But what you're saying is that is dictated by God.
Yeah, I think that that's a likely scenario, and if it's true, it would have to be something that God decided.
Yeah.
Right? And so like the thing is, man, all truth is God's truth, right? And I'm a super nerd for this kind of science stuff, obviously. And I think I had to come to a realization one time that I can't say that something's impossible simply because it seems to butt up against theology.
Right.
Like, if it's true, there's a way that it works. It's always going to work. Nothing's ever going to disprove the existence and presence of God, ever. And it'll all make sense. And so my job, when I think of these things, is just to go, okay, well, how does that work in the Christian paradigm?
Yeah.
You know? So this is
and we're given a lot of license to figure out what could work.
Exactly.
Within that
Exactly.
paradigm.
The Bible is very clear on the gospel. It's very clear on the divinity of Christ. It is very clear on, the solas of the Reformation, grace alone, faith alone, scripture
That
alone.
Nickelback is a bad band. It's openly.
That is
Clear,
in Genesis
exclusive.
That's in
72, 75.
Yes,
Pretty
and
sure?
doesn't exist kiss and second fallopians.
Yeah, right. Oh, good Lord.
Okay, to wrap this up.
Wait, I have one more. I have something to say to
sorry.
Mike.
So I'm so
I have-
sorry.
no.
Goodness.
John Polkinghorne. So he's a believer, and I believe his field is physics.
Uh-huh.
He's a perfect example. I have no issue with theorizing, looking at it, saying, what if this, what if that? And this is why I appreciate Polkinghorne. My only issue, and this is for believers, not atheists. I'm like the people at my church have said, hey, Mike, Seth, you're elders. We've commissioned you. We've trusted you.
Yeah.
My issue is when a Christian, I have no problem with him saying, hey, what about evolution? What about this? What about old earth? I have an issue when he goes, the source is not God, and it becomes that creation is a separate thing from God, and he's no longer given credit of, no, it was just this random thing outside of him, and he just kind of came in and tried to do what he could, because that's the only thing I feel I am solid on is, you can debate old earth, young earth. I'm an old earth guy. I'm more old earth guy.
Yeah, me too.
But when you go, but God wasn't behind any of this and it just was something that kind of came in. No, I feel like it's clear it gives him credit and due. That's what I hold on to. If someone wants to debate the age, fine. But if they go, I'm not going to give God any credit, that's when I start going, okay. Same thing with like the New Testament. If someone says, I want to debate, all right, we've talked about this with our friends, infant baptism, believer. But if they start taking away that baptism, ultimately what it leads to, who it points to, that's what I have issue with. As long as we always trace it back to God,
Yeah.
I have no issue because these things are brilliant. William Lane Craig, John Polkinghorne, and they're polar opposites, yet both respect each other, love each other, both believers. My issue is as long as a Christian I go, are you giving God his due for what he says? Because
Right.
I don't want to say what the Bible doesn't say. I also don't want to take away from what it does.
Yeah.
Sean, go on. You were going to talk about your nipples?
In response to what you just said,
Yes.
before I get to my nipples, imagine what the surrounding culture said about Zechariah, Isaiah, Ezekiel,
Yep.
Yeah.
John, even Paul.
Yeah.
Paul talks about the third heaven,
Yep.
And there's like 3 heavens
Yeah.
apparently. And I've heard it postulated that the first heaven is like the sky that we can see. The second heaven is space. And then the third heaven is like beyond that.
Yeah.
Where the X-Men live. Continue.
I mean, just imagine what people thought of them. They're like, you guys are crazy.
You're
Yeah.
nuts. Yeah.
So I don't think it's that bad to assume this stuff. And as many people as may say this is heretical or bordering on heresy, I think that's ridiculous.
They thought that about soteriology, though. If you think of it, it wasn't
That's
just
true.
space. They said,
Yeah, absolutely.
God loves you, even if you don't earn it. God loves you, even if you're a Gentile.
You're going to burn you at the stake.
They did, yeah.
Right.
If you said, I believe God, there's grace, they go, what? Even if you're not circumcised, even if you're a Gentile? So they wouldn't have even, they'd be like, hold on, with all space stuff. You just said God loves Paul, the murderer? His soteriology they thought was crazy. They went,
Right.
Jesus comes and they go, you're going to conquer him, right? He goes, no, I'm going to win by losing and live by dying. What? What? And they showed their feeling towards his views. They didn't have a town hall. They killed him.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So
I'm
that's true.
comparing Mike to Jesus.
So-
Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So Bruno, he's a philosopher, kind of paved the way for Galileo. He was the first to insist that the Earth revolved around the sun and not the opposite.
Oh, really?
And the
Before Galileo.
Yeah, and the Roman Catholic Church burned him at the stake.
Yeah, there you go.
There's nothing against, obviously, Roman Catholic Church is completely different today than it was back then, but
Roman popery.
but
Sort of.
I mean, there's a lot less murder, going
There's
on.
less
these days.
murder. I think we can agree on
A lot less burning at the stake.
that. We know
But
of.
it just goes to show that when you have a theology that's too closed-handed on issues that are not closed-handed, you make bad decisions.
And the Word of God is still the ultimate authority.
Yeah.
And you can postulate or even question some stuff without throwing out the Word of God, throwing out the
Exactly.
baby with the
And
bathwater.
Mike didn't, if you notice this, because this is for reform guys, not one thing he said when it's a creed, a council, or anything. Because we're so quick to say heretic. Someone goes, I don't know, I might vote for Bernie Sanders. Heretic! It's like, think of it. He didn't go against the deity of Christ. He didn't go against soteriology. He didn't go against God's love or the way of salvation. Think of it. And here's the thing. I think there's a big difference. This is where, and maybe Mike draws the line somewhere else. I have discussions I have with friends theorizing, and then I have when I go to the pulpit and preach.
Yeah.
Because absolutely.
Because when I go to a pulpit and preach, I know there's a certain, and Mike gets this. Ryan doesn't, but there's a thing where
I'm not going to go there.
When I go to the pulpit, whatever I'm preaching, I am stating this is authority, this is from God, and I'm trying to shepherd a flock and say, no, this is truth, and you can trust it won't lead you astray.
Yeah.
And I don't know why people can't distinguish. This is, Brandon Evans said this, I love this. The kryptonite of the American church is nuance. Sean and I will debate all types of weird stuff about predator, aliens, but when I get to a pulpit, and I've seen this with Mike Mumford, and this is why I love it about him. Every time he speaks with authority and does it, it's always truth. It's what can be confirmed. It's what's faithful. It's what's trustworthy. It's what's in scripture. It's what people have died for, church history, church fathers, our sisters and brothers, and all can be confirmed. And there is a difference. I debate with my wife about wouldn't it be cool if I had telekinesis? It does not mean...
do.
Oh, I did. No.
All humans do.
It's
statistically proven.
And this is the thing. And this is my issue with MacArthur. Not everyone who's questioning or having a discussion is automatically the category of, oh, he's Rob Bell or Benny Hinn going this way. I had big issues with Rob Bell, and they weren't that he was questioning. It was one, and I'm going to be honest about this. It was one that he was a coward and wouldn't stand behind the consequences of some of the stuff he was stating. 2, he was a pastor at the time and speaking these things publicly. And 3, there was an interview I saw him in where for 20 minutes they're asking him like, okay, this is the implication. Do you stand by that? And he wouldn't even say it.
Right.
And I have no problem with questioning or theorizing. I have a problem with you going up with something going, oh, I haven't really worked this out. And I know there might be non-believers here and sheep, but I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm going, you're playing with their salvation, messing with stuff that you may disagree with 6 months later, but just being casual, careless. I am fine with debating, thinking about aliens, debating, discussing. I am not fine with playing with people's salvation, just throwing stuff out because I want to show how enlightened I am. And for him to call his sermons performances later in life,
right?
No. I prep my sermons, read, look, go up there and take it seriously of, I'm about to open the word of God to speak to people who there may be a
if anyone's
prostitute
performing,
there.
it's the Holy Spirit.
Dude, there may be a prostitute in the audience coming off heroin, and this is the last thing she might hear before she's considering taking her life.
Yeah.
I take that seriously versus going, well, it may be, it may not, who knows, saying vague things. That to me is the height of white privilege and even salvation where you go,
Seth?
where you go, I know I'm saved, so I'm not in danger, so I can play with their salvation because I know I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
So I'm not in any danger. And I'm this white hipster theologian who can throw stuff out because you don't have to go back to that hotel where she's got off herself that night. Yeah. She needs that hope. And there's you distinguish between that and sitting with your friends and talking. And it shows a lack of maturity to me with Bell and discernment and the fact they wouldn't listen to wisdom. And that's why I don't respect him. I still don't to this day. Questioning has always been affirmed by a church, always reforming. That's one of them. Yeah. Always reforming. But cowardice is not. And I don't affirm that.
Yeah, I think... drop the mic. These are on mic stands. You can't really drop them, but I assure you that
Hold
you
on.
would. That's yeah.
Wait. Are we starting?
That was $25.
I wouldn't be so quick to say that Bell would just play with people's salvation. I think he's probably really convicted in the things that he says. I wouldn't agree with what he says, but he's not playing with anybody. However, I agree with you, Seth, that when you go in the pulpit, it's not the time to speculate about aliens and consciousness and things like that. Pulpit's designed for one thing and one thing only, and that is to, it's technically designed for maybe 2 things if you want to categorize it really, but it's to declare the excellencies of Christ in the gospel and to equip people to live out a Christian life.
Right.
And so I'm not going to say anything other than that. There's no reason to say anything other than
No.
that. You're wasting your time if you're
Right,
saying anything
right.
other than that. You're not preaching if you're saying anything other than that. It's called a lecture if you're saying anything other than that.
Right.
Those are the only things you're ever going to say. That's what expository preaching is at its finest, is you're just opening up the Bible and getting to the point, which is Christ. But, as we've been saying, if the Bible doesn't clearly forbid or clearly explain something, then we have all the right in the world to wonder.
Yeah.
And that's what I am, man.
Yeah.
I wonder constantly. I'm constantly wondering, man, what if this? What if that? That would be so amazing. For example, I was talking with one of the other pastors at Living Stones today, and I was like, what if prayer, the way that prayer works is that God moves our consciousness to a different timeline. So in the quantum mechanics theory that there's multiverse going on, right? Maybe something terrible has happened in another universe where my consciousness has witnessed something awful. Like I got in a horrifying car crash or something. And in that moment, I prayed to God, Lord, don't let this happen.
Yeah.
Please let me live. And then all of a sudden, I'm in a new universe in the multiverse where I have that never happened. And I don't know that happened, but the future me in a different universe prayed that prayer and God swapped my consciousness to a different timeline.
Wow.
Maybe that's happening a million times a second. Maybe that's how prayer works, is that
Sure.
God in the sovereignty knows the entire plan. He knows every probability that could ever take place in any circumstance. And he moves our consciousness along to the most current version of
Wow.
existence. Maybe that's how it works. I don't know. We don't know exactly how it works. We know that God is sovereign.
Yeah.
That he knows every outcome of everything that will ever happen. And we know that he responds to prayer by changing events. How do those things play together? I think the multiverse theory is kind of a good explanation.
How much bigger, too, is God when you consider him?
Yeah.
Like we say, oh my gosh, this is the God who's sovereign over past, present, and future.
Yeah.
But what if it's past,
All-
present, and future for every multiverse?
Yeah.
That inflates God's character.
Have
even
you read
more.
Paradoxology?
Not yet.
I thought that was a good one because this is, he gets into all this stuff of like, and it's more Eastern thinking where he goes, we try have like, okay, linear or
Yeah, right.
versus what if it really just is some of this stuff isn't going to make sense till heaven of no.
Right.
You think they're not working and God goes, no, to me, those can work perfectly together at the same time. Like if you say, well, was I saved now or was I always saved? And he goes, yes.
Multiverse.
And you're like,
Right.
and this is the thing. It's not to dog on him, even though he's put on weight. Rob Bell, like,
Come on, man.
he
He's a human.
he may not have intentionally do it, but I do. If you're
No one ever intentionally puts on weight.
if you're speaking about like universalism and stuff, and he may totally believe it, and maybe he's not intentionally doing it. I do think that is for someone coming in at the end of their rope saying, "We all get in, don't worry."
Right.
I
Oh,
do
yeah.
feel
No,
like
it's
you're
terrible.
taking a risk with salvation.
Oh,
of like,
Absolutely.
It's not even a risk. You're just
he's
straight
only
up
put on a
condemning
few
people.
pounds. Last time I saw him, he was surfing. We hung
So-
out and I fought him.
So, yeah, this podcast is not the pulpit. Maybe we need
Yeah.
to change the title. Podcast, not pulpit.
Yeah.
This podcast
Never.
is not the pulpit. We have fun talking about stuff. We drink, we smoke tobacco products, and we
Pastors
enjoy.
don't smoke, Sean, or drink.
And
Glug,
we
glug, glug.
enjoy the we enjoy the ability to discuss these things. This is not the pulpit.
No.
So I don't want any open letters about how we're misconstruing the word of God. I just want to make it clear. This is just a podcast. We're having fun talking about stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
That being said, there's 2 questions left that we have to answer. as
Ah,
quickly
that's
as
right.
possible.
Sorry, Mike. Yeah,
Okay.
because Mike brought up stuff, dude. This could have been like 5
I
episodes.
know. I could keep talking
I'm
all
all.
night.
But
yeah.
what about aliens and peeing? And what about?
I
go
could
ahead.
take 2 Ambien right now and
Just
and talk all
rage,
night.
bro.
All right, go. 2 questions. What are they?
2
Go ahead.
questions. The first question is, do you have a tale from the ditch? And I think an appropriate thing to talk about, if you do, is have you had any experience with that, what we would describe as paranormal?
Oh, yeah.
Have you
I've
seen
had-
a UFO? Have you seen a ghost? Have you seen a Bigfoot?
Have you seen Sean
well,
in
I have
Alaska?
not.
Have you
I've
seen me
never
in Alaska?
seen.
It was you.
If you count tonight's podcast, I have seen a Bigfoot.
There you go.
I have both seen ghosts and UFOs. I've had a lot of weird experiences. I think one thing...
I've seen an angel. We can talk about that later, though. I'm dead serious.
No, me too. Me too. I mean, that's probably what I'm going to talk about. So, but I've seen a lot of weird stuff. I think one thing that is important to remember is that if you remain open to these concepts, you will have more realizations about them. I think that if you open yourself up to evil stuff, then you'll have that as well. So you got to be careful to not, to not entertain demons and not entertain, darkness and things like that. But I think if you open yourself up to what possibly could, then you'll actually kind of see it for what it is sometimes. Because I think it's all around us all the time. These things we consider paranormal aren't actually paranormal. It's just normal. We just don't really recognize it very often. You want to talk about paranormal? Talk about the fact that there's a planet that we live on. Like, you look at the scheme of the universe and how many planets there are, it's not that many. This is paranormal. Life itself is paranormal.
On this flat Earth.
On this flat Earth.
Right, Tyler?
This disc of a planet.
With a turtle holding us up.
And a flying spaghetti monster holding us down.
Oh, Bill Maher, quit making fun of my mom.
Okay, so I think, it's important to remain open to these concepts. It's just important to remain open in general, to not speak where the Bible doesn't speak, and not
have you had an
where the Bible is very clear.
So your experience.
What's the experience? I want to know.
My experience. Okay, so I got a bunch. I think what I'll stick to is this one angel encounter. I'm pretty sure it was an angel. So I was, I had graduated high school, went to Cape and Ray Bible School in England, which was an awesome experience.
Dope.
No way. I went to a Cape and Ray school called Timberline in Colorado.
Oh, yeah. So I went to the one in England.
Wow.
Yeah.
Weird.
Coincidence or multiversal?
Multiverse. Me and Sean are the same consciousness from a different multiverse.
That's right.
So I went to Cape and Ray Bible School. That was awesome. Then I moved to Boston, to pursue a career in music and go to Berklee College of Music. Didn't get in. Kind of a long story, but
did you have a car?
I didn't have a car. No, I did have a car.
Did
I
you
had
live
an
in
Audi
Impala?
90. I still say a couple of words with a Boston accent.
Really?
I say forward with no R's.
I saw your mom.
Forward, and when I say the F word, it comes out very Bostonian as well. I'll spare you. No, feckin' is Irish.
Yeah, that's. Do you know? Continue.
Sorry, keep going.
So I'm in Boston. I haven't been to church in over a year, probably at this point.
Wow.
Super depressed. I am suicidal. The only thing keeping me alive is World of Warcraft, of all things, because it was the only outside interaction I was getting with other people that actually liked me and wanted to talk to me. So I'm in a really hard spot. My girlfriend and I go to church for the first time because she's recognizing it's not my wife. This is a different lady who is an awesome person, but I really was a dick badly to her. So anyway, neither here nor there. It's part of the reality of being in a terrible life stage and somebody trying to be close to you during that. Anyway, so we go to church because she's recognizing that I'm in a terrible spot and I need to go back to church. And it's a Pentecostal church, a vineyard church of all things. I'm not really a Pentecostal kind of guy, but I was just like, it's close to my house and it's hard to get around anywhere in Boston, so I'm just going to go to this spot. And it's in the middle of a 15-minute long worship song. Can't remember which one it was. They probably didn't have any actual lyrics. But
holy, holy, holy.
And this guy who's standing in front of me, he's like a maybe 5'2" short guy, older, probably in his 60s. Looks like he's in his 60s. Gray curly hair, perfect teeth. Interestingly enough. And gray eyes, which is also strange. Like light gray eyes, not like, bluish gray, just like very light gray eyes. In the middle of the song, I'm just literally standing there with my arms crossed, and the guy turns around and without asking my permission, puts his hand on my chest and starts saying, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans for good and not for harm, plans to prosper you." You know, Jeremiah 29:11.
Yeah.
And he just repeats it over and over again, right? As soon as he touches me, I have an outer body experience where my perspective of where I'm watching this all take place is now like 6 seats down the aisle, and I'm watching myself from the side and this man touching me on the chest. While this is happening, my entire vision goes gray, and everything is in this weird, incorporeal state where I am made of stone. My whole body is made of stone, and he is a being of light. And his light is touching the stone that makes up my body. And every time he says, "I know the plans I have for you," and recites Jeremiah 29:11, this pulse of light comes out of his arm and hits my body, and a fragment of stone busts off of my person. And he keeps saying it, and the more he says it, the more stuff is falling off of me. And then when I come to out of the third outer body experience, I'm just like weeping uncontrollably. And the guy just turns around and walks out in the middle of service. He just leaves.
Whoa.
Never saw him again. Pretty sure he was an angel. Some kind of manifestation of God's presence trying to get my attention.
Wow.
Well, just because stuff like that happened in the Bible doesn't mean Christians should think about that. I mean,
Yeah, pretty nuts, man.
That's crazy. So did people witness that?
Yeah, my girlfriend is standing right next to me.
And she saw him saying that and
Yep.
touching your chest?
Yep.
Wow.
She saw me totally
That's
fall
crazy.
apart.
that's
and
awesome.
He left, and she was there when I was trying to find him after the service and stuff. And
I'm charismatic. I'm all for it. I already affirm all this, and I don't care. No, it's dope. So there was a night where I was trying to, like...
he also could have been an alien, because there are being of
Ah!
aliens.
Yeah, I zigged.
Fair enough,
You
fair
zigged when I thought you were going to zag. Sean literally, remember this? All right. I was going to rededicate myself to God because I knew you could lose your salvation every 5 seconds.
Did you get baptized again?
Dude, I prayed.
That's a vital part of this process.
This is the crazy thing. I prayed with Sean this night and 2 other people of, man, I've fallen away. I want to rededicate myself to God. And I don't think I was a Christian at the time. That night we went to a show, and before I prayed, I said, God, rededicate me. Like, give me what are you doing? Help me, like, reveal my heart. We went to a show that night, and Sean brought his camera to record the concert.
I was
happened,
filming
Sean?
a movie.
Dude.
I was filming a little film.
Were you really
Reno.
filming a film, or was it a...
No, I was trying to film a film about
Film a film?
Reno.
Okay.
And it was about Reno and the hardcore scene and blah, blah, blah and stupid stuff.
And I just prayed an hour before that.
And Seth had said, hey, I've been screwing up. I want to get back into the Christian lifestyle.
And this made me believe in God's sovereignty.
And so I was filming fake, like,
Fake hardcore?
scripted. No, like I was filming the hardcore dancers and the band playing and everything. And then scripted situation where people beat Seth up because it's part of the film.
Yeah.
Did they really beat you up?
Not at this part.
Like Ong
Go
Bak
ahead.
style?
Well, and somebody like throws a fake punch and Seth's like, ooh. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so I'm filming kind of B-roll of like people fighting and stuff like that. And all of a sudden people start beating up Seth.
Like, for real?
Like for real. But I didn't realize
They
that
brought
at the
me
time.
on stage and said, welcome to the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Seth stands up on stage and people put their hands on his shoulders and they say, hey, we want to welcome you to this family. And it's been a long time coming. And, they said, we want to see, the most of you, or we want to see
Something
your
like that.
potential or something
Yeah.
like that. And then people start beating the crap out of Seth and I'm filming and I'm like, oh, like these people heard we're doing this. And so they're like in on this.
Uh-huh.
And then after like, I don't know, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, I'm like,
You
oh.
realized I was getting jumped in.
Yeah, Seth starts bleeding, and I'm like, oh, they're really hitting him. And so I stopped filming. Seth got jumped into a gang that night, which furthered his gang career for, I don't know, a couple more years.
Yeah. And it was after, yeah.
There's
it was
a good
after
ending
all
to
of
this story, right?
Yeah, eventually.
Okay, good.
Sean,
Not that night.
so I got jumped in, and they give me a hockey mask because that was what we were about. And by the way, if you're like, oh, that's silly, every gang name is silly. Bloods, you're named after blood. If you get into it, it's all the repetition that goes with it. But that was actually the catalyst that drove me deeper in the darkness, which eventually broke me and sent me back to Christ. So technically, God answered my prayer that night,
That's true.
but it was 4 years later.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Sean filmed it because I found the family I thought I wanted. They proved to be just as broken as I was, and that eventually drove me back to Christ, where I did dedicate myself and became a real Christian with Judah Holland praying in the back of the church with me. But I prayed that prayer years before, and God goes, I will bring you back to me, and it'll be through blood and pain.
Just think of this. There's a universe out there where you didn't get jumped in that night and you're not a Christian.
Exactly.
Did I finish college in that universe?
You probably did. You're probably making a lot of money.
I went to college for 8 years and I know how well.
The thing about that night is I was so frustrated because I remember I was like, Seth, dude, we just had this talk. You're not going to do this. And I remember he was beaming because he felt like people supported him and people loved him. More than I could express to him, more than his family could express to him. And I was like, great. Well, I've lost Seth. But as it turns out, in 4 years, like your Christianity came to fruition through all of that stuff.
So crazy.
Through difficult times.
You had it on tape.
Man.
Which is why if anybody has a digital 8mm camera, I need to borrow it so I can get that onto actual.
We gotta get that tape.
I think we
gotta
probably
get that
have one
tape.
at the church.
Well, I'll look you up at that. I'll tell my experience really quick, and then we'll
shoot.
ask the final question.
And Mike Cox was in that audience, and I baptized him years later. He got jumped in 3 years
that's
after
crazy.
me.
He was on our podcast.
Yeah.
Other people too. Who?
Oh yeah, there's other people. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's amazing your story. It's such a lot of people. So my story.
What's your story?
Experience with, I think, a ghost, or what I would call a ghost at the time. I was hanging out with a person at Lake Tahoe in northern Nevada. Or actually, it was in California. And I was on the beach as far away from other people except this one individual as I could get. And I was engaging in some illicit activities, which I don't really need to discuss.
Sure.
But basically, it was me and this other person. And
Hold on. Were you high though?
no,
Okay.
I was dead sober, and I was in middle school. Our families, me and this other person's families, were like nearby. And so we had walked down the beach at the shoreline to get far away. And it's really dark. There's not a lot of lights in this area of Lake Tahoe. And so we were trying to go away from everybody so that we could get to a dark area where people couldn't see us doing whatever we were doing. Then all of a sudden, what we were doing was very private. All of a sudden, this person comes up to us on the beach about, I don't know, 6 feet, 12 feet in the water.
Ugh.
And wearing a wedding dress looking type of thing.
Oh, no.
I'm totally serious. Blowing in the wind.
Oh, no.
And her hair, it was a lady. Her hair was blowing in the wind. And she just started walking towards us. And my initial reaction was like, oh my gosh, we just got caught and we need to like leave. And so we just walked away. And I remember as we were walking back towards where our families were, I looked back and I see this lady, hair blowing in the wind, wedding dress blowing in the wind.
And you realize there's no wind.
And yeah, there was no
No way.
There was no waves.
Oh, man.
There was no even tiny waves. It was just still. The water was glass. And I looked back and then I was like, I hope that lady doesn't know our families so that she doesn't tell
Right.
them what we were doing. At that point, I didn't think anything of it until maybe 2 hours later when I was like, was that a ghost? Because that was very ghosty.
It sounds like a ghosty thing to do.
Yeah, that was a ghosty lady.
Classic ghosty.
And I remember I went back the next morning and
The beach was covered in blood.
no, there was nothing. But it was hard to explain because between where we were, and you guys know Tahoe, but maybe not all our listeners do.
Sure.
Between where we were and the circumference around the lake for about, I don't know, 6 to 7 miles, there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. There's a highway and that's it. So wherever
It's
this
not like she just
person
like
came
walked
from,
out of a hotel somewhere.
yeah,
decided to
on
go
the
swimming
water
in a wedding dress.
somehow. Yeah, it was so weird.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You know, there's a legend of a goddess in Hawaii. I grew up a significant amount of time on the islands, on Kauai to be exact. And there's a goddess named Pele that they would worship. She's the goddess of fire,
Right.
And she meets that exact description: woman in a white dress, hair blowing in the wind.
Really?
So I wonder if there's some kind of connection. And what happens in Hawaii is people
Pele.
people see Pele standing on the side of the road, in the specific road on Kauai called the Tree Tunnel. And if you see Pele on the side of the road, you're supposed to stop and pick her up. Because if you don't pick her up, then her dogs chase after you and kill you. That's
What?
the legend.
Really?
Yeah. And you're not supposed to go through the tree tunnel at midnight if you have meat in the car. That's the other part of the urban legend.
Never if you have meat in the
Dang
car.
it! I've done that like 4 times.
But I've talked to people that are like, I saw Pele last night. Like straight up saw it.
Wow.
You know, with a real similar story that you just clip is on the side of the road, that she was sitting on the side of the road with a white dress, hair blowing in the wind, the whole thing.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And I think the lady in
I
the
didn't
white,
know that.
the lady in the white dress story is actually not extremely uncommon,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that's very common.
which just makes me wonder what that is. Maybe it's some kind of echo of consciousness or some kind of manifestation of
You're
the,
multi-ethnic in your paranormal experience, Sean. Acts 29 supports
Well, so one of the theories
very
about these
interesting.
paranormal visions, these sightings of ghosts and things like that, is that they're not dead people coming back to life. They're not
ghosts, as
Yeah.
we would
right, exactly, not
would
ghosts.
term them.
They're not demons. They're not goddesses. They're not like that. It's more like your mind needs to understand something, so it projects what you need to see.
Huh.
So the person that you're seeing is not really there, but you may have had your conscience may have not consciousness. Your conscience may have been screaming out for help, and your mind made this person come into fruition to stop you from doing whatever
Wow.
it was you were doing. And
Almost like God's sovereignty.
almost like maybe God wants you to walk in righteousness
Yeah,
and
yeah.
not ruin your life and
Y'all
stuff.
hear
Yeah.
the dogs bark in the background?
Oh gosh.
You see what I'm saying, though? And so a lot of paranormal activity can be explained by the collected consciousness manifesting things that the mind needs to see in order to survive.
Wow. Well, that's clearly what it was. I'm going to chalk it up to that.
Or
The
it was a
dogs of
spirit.
Saba-
I'm gonna tell
Maybe.
my demon story next episode.
Okay.
Dude, I got saved because a demon tried to possess me.
Oh my
no
gosh.
joke.
We got to have you back, Mike.
All right.
All right, Seth, you ask him the question. I'll try
the
to get these
question?
dogs, demon dogs outside to shut up.
All I hear, well, they might be barking at a ghost. How do you know? I mean, we
That's
don't know.
true.
Maybe
It's
I'm
just a
dream.
manifestation of the
Maybe I'm
collective
just a
consciousness. It's
dream.
fine.
Who cares? No,
You're all, it's actually statistically more likely that I am a brain floating in space hallucinating all this stuff and that the universe actually exists in the form that I believe it does.
Why do you do this to me? Like,
No.
It's called the
That
Boltzmann
being
brain
said-
theory.
Okay. You're a brain floating in the universe.
Yeah.
And you're projecting all of these things because it is
Jeez.
the something that your brain can handle. Seth, ask him the question.
All right. So, as a brain,
Yes.
do you like gluten-filled, disgusting cake or gluten-free pie?
Is this really the question?
Yeah, pie or cake. It's the same.
Pie.
There.
100% pie.
Thank you.
Never cake.
Thank you.
Yes! Yes!
I hate cake.
Yes!
Because this isn't communist Russia.
Cake
okay?
is just bread with frosting on it.
Yes!
Do you know? All right, this is actually fact. Stalin would foot. No. Yes, dude. I feel like we're winning
gosh,
on this.
we are so
and
winning.
It's such a petty little hill to die
Pie.
on, but
Pie
I will
versus cake?
die on it. Yes,
Who would
yes.
choose cake over pie? Who?
Oh,
I think-
you want to
I
Here's
think,
the
okay, hold on,
crazy
hold on, hold on.
Hitler,
Mo- if
Stalin, Mao.
Speaking of the multiverse,
Trump?
majority of the multiverses have chosen pie so far.
I think
feel-
that's true. I think every time someone chooses cake, we switch timelines.
Isn't that the darkest timeline? Is choosing cake?
It is the
right,
darkest
exactly.
timeline. In the you see Community with the darkest timeline, the whole situation?
Yes.
That's exactly what this is.
Cable came back to make sure that people chose pie.
Agreed.
Oh, so good. All right, well that's it. I think
This concludes our
Trying to
dogs are
podcast.
say-
still
Smoke.
barking.
Say
This is
something.
amazing, Mike. We got to have you back. Thank you very much
Love
for
to.
coming.
Thank
This was very informative, and
Yeah, lots to think
also
about.
I don't have a million questions. You're right. This is, dude. I'm like,
all my questions are answered.
He'd
There's
say
nothing to think
something. I'm
about.
like, I need 5 days to go pray about and process this. Like,
But that being said, is there anything else you'd like to say before we end this?
Yes, I would love to. And it is that none of this exists. We're all in the Matrix. I'm just joking. But no, seriously though.
I just burned my finger. Continue.
Sean said this earlier, or maybe it was Seth. I'm not sure. One of you two jabronis said it. The Bible is clear about what needs to be clear. So, these things are fun to think about, but when it comes to actually interpreting reality and interpreting the things that really matter, like the eternal trajectory of our souls and the nature of God and all this, we trust the church history, the interpretation of the scriptures. We trust the scriptures. We trust our pastors. We trust godly people to lead us in these things. You never want to take a chance when it's something that the Bible is very clear about.
Yes.
And so while I extremely enjoy all these fun conversations about aliens and Sasquatch and things like that, I will never put into jeopardy the concrete foundations of the Christian faith, and you should never put those things into jeopardy either.
Word.
Take that, follow.
That's right.
I don't know. All right. Zip it up.
Zip it up.
All right.